Hey KBC Youth, welcome to our segment dedicated to our theme this fall, which is Stories Matter. This semester, we're going to be exploring stories of church members here at KBC and how their stories can inspire and help us connect with others in the world. And this week, I'm very excited to introduce our guest, Caroline Penberthy. Caroline has been a member for our church for over 42 years. Throughout her life, Caroline has worked at the Missouri Baptist Children's Home, working with abandoned children, served as a psychiatric social worker at local hospitals in St. Louis, and after retiring, she even ran a bed and breakfast for relatives and friends, and now is the hospitality coordinator of our hospitality homes here at Kirkwood Baptist Church. So Caroline, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Taylor, for inviting me. It's a joy to be with you, always.
So for some of our youth who may not be familiar with you, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and what brought you to KBC, and talk a little bit more about your experience here at the church?
Well, what brought me to Kirkwood Baptist Church was my husband.
Oh.
And he's really the third major event in my life that has changed my life. And he drew me to the church because he liked the hospitality that we received. The pastor came and visited us that very day and brought us bread. Can you believe that? So it's been an awesome experience.
Yeah.
We raised our children here. We served as deacons and served in teaching. We served in the choir. We found a way to be useful for the Lord. And over 40 some odd years, we've always found a place to serve.
Wow.
And it's been an exciting ride.
That's amazing. One of the questions I like to ask our guests at the beginning is what role religion played in their childhood growing up. So could you tell us what role religion played in your life when you were growing up as a kid?
Well, to start off with, my father was a German Southern Baptist who had the book of Revelations on a map on the kitchen table that he had memorized how to go to heaven. My mother, on the other hand, was an Irish Catholic, and they went together for 5 years with the priest telling him not to go through with this because it would be a disaster. But they didn't know the power of love, and they loved each other so much they tried to break up several times and it didn't work. So they decided they were going to go ahead with it, but they were going to use love and respect, and I never did hear them argue. Now that's kind of unusual.
Yeah.
So they raised me, but I had a very liberal education because my mother took me to Mass ever since I was six weeks old.
Wow.
And my father would entice me to read in the scriptures and to memorize scriptures, and would bribe me with a book that I wanted to have if I memorized it correctly.
Yeah.
And so you might say I got a double whammy of religion, a whole bunch.
You got the Catholic side and the evangelical side together all at once. Yeah. That's really cool.
And so I can see things from both sides, and I guess that puts me in the role of being a negotiator on a high conflict resolution stage.
Yeah. I think that's great, and to be able to understand and see different sides of arguments or different opinions is something that's valuable and very mature. So that's pretty cool. You shared with me a testimony that you wrote a few years ago, and as I was reading through it, I found out in high school you had many years of being teased for your height, and you also struggled in school to a degree. You wrote that you had a senior high counselor advise you to either get married or enter the convent as a nun. Some of our middle school and high school students may be going through some situation that might be similar like that. And I was just curious what advice you might have from that experience to share with them.
Well, I'll answer the second part first.
Yeah.
My mother raised 4 girls, and she wanted us all to be nuns.
Okay.
Catholic nuns. So after high school, I went into the convent for a period of time, and I actually did anticipate that is God calling me in this way. And the other thing then is to go back to your first question is I was nervous in high school too. I was nervous going into the 6th grade because my grandfather died and we moved from a small apartment with my 3 younger siblings, and we moved to this big home with a delicatessen, a marketplace right next door that my grandmother owned. And so it made me go to a new school. At the new school, the first day, the girl bullied me.
Oh.
She wanted me to fight on the playground, and I said, being the negotiator, I'll meet you in front of church after school. I'll meet you in front of our church.
Yeah.
Because I was in the Catholic school at the time.
Okay.
So went through a Catholic school, made a good friend out of that bully, by the way. And that helped me feel a little more confident. Is that I took a bad situation and I talked it through, and I told her what Jesus would want us to do as good Catholic girls.
Yeah.
And she bought it. And but then I went to high school, and that was really hard for me, because here I am, 6'2", and all the guys in my class are 5'6". I wanted to dance. I wanted to be a fun, partying, and enjoyable high school experience, and it was horrible. I would walk down the halls and they would tease me, call me the Jolly Green Giant, and Amazon, and all kinds of horrible names.
Oh my gosh.
And the thing that helped me the most, I really wanted to get my legs sawed off. I mean, I was that desperate. But the thing that helped me the most to get over that was to put my focus on my goal. My goal is to serve God in this environment and to do the best I can.
So focusing on your goal, like setting goals for yourself and focusing, was a way that you were able to handle and deal with some of the teasing and the bullying that happened to you when you were in high school. I think that's...
I really prayed about it a lot, because I mean, it was horrible. But I was taught not to hate anyone. We couldn't even utter that word in our house when I was growing up. Yeah. So I had to turn it into love. So I had to pray for those people that were bullying me and stay out of their way at the same time. I mean, that was a little difficult.
Yeah.
But I saw it work.
Yeah.
It worked because I didn't swallow that poison in my...
That's amazing. So you mentioned that you were a psychiatric social worker over the years. Can you briefly tell us as a youth group and me as a youth pastor what a psychiatric social worker does?
Oh my goodness. Well, I have a master's degree from Washington University.
Okay.
And that was a miracle in itself, because I came from a poor family.
Yeah.
But again, that was because of a hard time, and there were grants available, and so I got the 2 years of training. My grandmother, whom I loved, passed away of a brain tumor.
Oh.
So because of that, I was specifically interested in the psychiatry of the brain. and how people process their thoughts and what we do with those thoughts and how those thoughts are converted into actions. So I wanted to do that. I wanted to find out as much as I could about the brain and how it operates. And so I got my degree. I went to work at the youth center at State Hospital, where the most difficult children in the world are housed.
Yeah.
They were either suicidal, homicidal, or manic depressive, or schizophrenic. But I cut my teeth on the most difficult young people because I felt called to serve young people at that time. And so what I did in therapy with these young people was to have them in my office for an hour a week or 2 hours a week at separate times to listen to their story, to help them change their story from a bad experience, to a positive one, to find some meaning in that life that they could latch onto and that they could convert into the ability to withstand the impulses that they had. Some of them went through horror. Some of them went through extreme conditions in growing up. And the psychiatrist that was mentoring me at that time says, you almost have to allow them to tell your story. And it's like you have to crawl out on the ledge and hang on with your fingertips. Don't abandon them there when they're telling you the horrific story, because your presence going through that is going to be what redeems them. That was a powerful lesson I will never forget. When my mother was in the hospital because she had a nervous breakdown, this is after we converted. Her family cut us off, abandoned us, and they considered us dead. So when she had that nervous breakdown, what they were doing in the hospital at that time was, all they knew about doing therapy was playing cards and watching television. And that wasn't helping my mother at all. And so what I wanted to do when I worked in psychiatry, I worked at 6 different local hospitals and set up a program whereby I would do just what that psychiatrist had mentored me to do. I would listen to people's stories and I would gather them around in a group, and each one would get a chance to tell their story, and I would find a way to validate them in their storytelling so that they could begin to see themselves in the light of God, that they were blessed people, that they were holy people, and it transformed lives. So I decided to teach other professionals how to do this because I was running out of space. We couldn't pack them all in. There were 150 families we were serving at DePaul Hospital, at St. Vincent's. And so I had a group of 6 or 8 professionals, nurses, assistants, social workers in training, and physical therapists, everybody that had any kind of interest in serving the population. We gave them a chore to do, a job, and that was to meet with a group of patients, to listen to their story, to give them affirmation, and to help them to find a new way to break through this old pattern.
Wow. So now you're retired, but you're not just chilling at home, just sipping a cup of tea and watching TV all day. You're still really busy. In fact, you're one of our main volunteers and dedicated persons for the hospitality homes at our church. These 2 homes that are behind our church are used to house families for free while they have loved ones staying in extended stays at hospitals. And you greet people when they show up. You continue to check in on them. You have a little team that you have put together that will help bake cookies or bread, or put milk in the fridge when they first show up, welcome them to St. Louis, be a contact for them. And some of these families aren't even just out of state, but they're out of the country. Can you share with us what is it about caring for these people? Like, how does your faith influence the way that you care for these people? Like, why do you go the extra mile to care for them?
I love it, and God has given me this wonderful opportunity to live out a childhood dream. Because as a child growing up, I had a strict mother, and the nuns were even more strict. But my grandmother, she had a delicatessen, and whenever I got sick or felt bad, I would go and get an ice cream cone, and she would hold me on her lap, and she would comfort me, and she would fix my bruises. And that was an early training experience that God gave me that's allowed me to carry out what she's done in her marketplace or her delicatessen.
Yeah.
Because it was during the Depression, and people would come in and they begged for bread and they didn't have money to buy it. And she would say, I'll just put your name down in a notebook, and you can pay me when you get your money. And she was always generous to a fault. She was always giving, and I can't help but tell you how that influenced my ability to do what I do. It's a God thing. I didn't do this on my own. I'm not a generous person. I'm very selfish by nature. And yet, God's given me this opportunity, and it's like, I can't help myself. I just do it. I love it. I love doing it for those people.
Yeah.
And it gives me a chance to get to know other cultures and other worlds.
Yeah.
Because one of the things when I was going to be a nun, I was going to go to Africa. I was going to go to China. Well, God didn't allow that to happen. And yet, He's allowed me to meet people from different cultures and different religions and to have a relationship with them. And I couldn't be happier.
Wow, that's beautiful. And finally, Caroline, I ask all of our guests at the very end if there's anything else that, like a takeaway, that they would want to share with our students before we go. So I was wondering if there's anything like a little takeaway that you would want to share to the youth.
Well, I've seen a few of the other youth interviews that you've done, so I kind of had a clue about that.
Yeah.
And I did think that the thing that I would encourage young people to do is to know that God has a purpose. No matter how bad you think things are, God has a purpose for your going through that and working it through with Him. And He will give you guidance, and He will give you support. And my daily prayer as I take Bailey for a walk is, God, go before me, go beside me, go behind me and clean up the messes, because I do mess up a lot.
Well, Caroline, this has been a lot of fun. I can't thank you enough for sharing your story with us. It's truly been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for asking. I love it.